Well, thank you, Representative Saine, for being with us today. We appreciate you being here. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Can you briefly just introduce yourself? Tell us about your background and your
Yeah,
experience.
glad to. Representative Jason Sain. I represent Lincoln County, Republican. Represent the whole county. I'm kind of one of the legislators that have a unique district where I have a whole county. That's by the Constitution. We just have the exact right number of people that live there. So when we redistricted the last several times, even after several lawsuits, my district fits that exact number. And so I do have the opportunity to represent Lincoln County where I grew up. My wife, Catherine, and I live there. We've got a son, Jackson, who's 15, and at Lincoln Charter School. So obviously we believe in school choice because we practice it. But and we also have a dog, Sasha. She's a Belgian Malinois, and she's a bundle of energy. And we love where we live. We chose Lincoln County. Catherine and I met at UNC Charlotte. We were involved in college Republicans together, so it comes natural to both of us to be engaged and involved in politics. Didn't know that I'd necessarily run. Always loved helping other people. I loved working on campaigns. It was kind of my first job getting out of school. Worked on a gubernatorial campaign for two of our Republican candidates, one in the primary, and then someone else won, and I worked for them. But been engaged in for a long time in politics and policy, and really enjoyed it. Worked for a group called Citizens for a Sound Economy once upon a time, right as we were getting married, and I did that for about 3.5 years. So was active and on the ground and working on policy issues across the state. Worked on conservative policy, and so it was really rewarding and helped me build a database of people across the state and a network of people across the state. So now in the role that I play, I'm now Senior Appropriations Chairman, but have been the Finance Chairman, the Senior Finance Chairman. So Finance Chairman takes the taxes in and the Appropriation Chairman helps decide how the money's spent. So I've seen both sides of the coin. I know what it means to do both. And so I think that's given me kind of a unique perspective in what I do here at the legislature. Have a lot of fun with it. Also serve as a conference leader, so responsible for helping our caucus get reelected and to recruit new people to run and win and come join us at the legislature.
Right. So you are considering a run for Speaker of the House. Is that kind of where you're at right now?
I think so. I've had multiple members talk to me who are supportive, and that's not taking any away from anyone else that has announced. Have great respect for everyone who's announced. At the same time, I think it's very early. We really have another year to go. My role and my function as the conference leader is to, one, get us back to a majority, because you can't elect a speaker unless you have a majority. So let's start there. Hope to get us back to a supermajority, and then we can decide who's going to be speaker. So it's laser focused on that. It's nice to be mentioned, but it's also, I think, for me personally, a little premature to make a decision. And again, get along great. The two other names that are mentioned most, Representative Destin Hall and Representative John Bell, dear friends, both of them. Go to lunch and dinner with one or the other at any given time, and sometimes all three of us go together. So there's no bad blood or no hard feelings. It just means we're all in the same place, same time, where members of our caucus are looking to us to fill that next leadership role.
And so you are the Senior Appropriations Chair currently, which is obviously a very powerful position in the House. How has this role prepared you for an office like Speaker?
Well, you end up dealing with all of your members, and with Democrat members. So rising through kind of the chairmanships of started as an IT chairman, then finance, and then appropriations. But dealing with all members of the legislature, because the speaker isn't just elected by one party, or doesn't need to be. It's not required, right? But he does lead the entire body. So whether you're partisan or not partisan, it really doesn't matter when you're speaker, because you're really running and operating the function of the House. You can't vote on these bills until you get a process in place, and you have, one, qualified people working for you, two, a steady hand at making sure things kind of stay on track and get to where you need to get to. So having ran the committee process, being involved, being engaged in my caucus, has helped a lot. And I've worked a lot on a number of bills in a bipartisan fashion. So I think I have good respect across the aisle. So I think that's helpful too when we think about who's going to take the place of Speaker.
So you've been here a little while. How many years have you been
12,
here?
12 and a half years.
12 and a half years. So what would you say is your most significant legislative accomplishment since you've been here?
So my most significant legislative accomplishment has been the friendships, and it's not one piece of legislation. I could point to a number of things that we've done over the years, passed, and some that we didn't pass. There's a puppy mill bill that I ran multiple times that never made it over the finish line. I do think it's important, and it highlighted an important issue. We did sports betting legislation that was important, I think, for our state to figure out where we were going to be when compared to other states. But more than any piece of legislation, budget obviously is always important and been a part of successful budgets. But the thing most important to me is the friendships that are formed, because that's really how you operate here at the building. If you don't have friends, you don't have much, because no one person can move anything by themselves at the legislature. And so if you don't have those relationships, again, cross-party lines, within my caucus, outside of my caucus, you don't have much. And so when I first got here, Speaker Tillis at the time said to me, I was appointed, he said, you kind of get a free pass for a year. Really? Go make relationships, go make friendships, and go from there. And I took his advice, and it has paid off.
So, as Speaker of the House, if you were to be elected to that position, you would undoubtedly need to work with members of both parties across the aisle. You touched on this a little bit, but especially if Republicans don't have a supermajority, which is possible, how do you intend to build consensus and find common ground on a number of issues?
So I've always told my caucus members, one thing to remember, you may not always be in the majority. With that in mind, if you're going to come back up here, serve your people at home, which should be your number one priority, you've got to be effective. And you've got to be able to be effective whether you're in the majority or whether you're in the minority. And so I've always had special attention paid to that fact, to always have relationships on both sides of the aisle, to be able to work with people with a different viewpoint and try to find common ground to get to a better place. Certainly I have my bias. I'm a conservative, and I don't apologize for that. But the reality is, I'm not an effective legislator if I can't move legislation, if I can't get things done. And I always want to make sure that I can do that whether we're in the majority or whether we're in the minority. And so I think that, more than anything, probably would help me in the role of Speaker.
And North Carolina faces a variety of challenges, whether that's economic growth, infrastructure, education, healthcare, whatever. How do you plan to tackle some of these issues as Speaker?
So, one issue at a time. It's like eating an elephant. You do it one bite at a time. But these things are very important for our state. When I first got here, was unemployed looking for work, and was able to get the appointment to come because I had the free time. Not the place I wanted to be in my personal life necessarily, but the opportunity came. But in that, knowing that how important it is for that our people in our state always need new opportunities and want to be able to grow the businesses that they're already in. It's as much about recruiting as it is about growing homegrown businesses. We always want to make sure that our tax policy is the right tax policy, that we remain competitive when we look at other states. As the finance chairman, worked a lot on tax reform, making sure that we have that right formula, that when companies are looking to either expand or to relocate, that they're doing it in North Carolina. And that, above all, I think, gives us the other things we need. Because if we've got the income that's coming in, if we've got the economic activity, we will then have better schools, we'll have better roads, we'll have really better state government. We have to be efficient. It's not about just bringing in money and spending it. It's about being very efficient and very intentional in what you do.
So you touched on this earlier, but there's a number of other members who are considering to run for Speaker or have already announced, whether that's Representative Destin Hall, Majority Leader John Bell, even Representative Keith Kidwell. So why do you believe you're the best candidate for the position of Speaker, potentially, if you do decide to run? And then what message would you want to send to your Republican colleagues?
Well, I don't think it's more about being who's better, who's best. I think it's more of differences in leadership styles. Members will choose when that time does come what style they like. And I think the four names that you mentioned, including me, offer something a little bit different. And I don't think that's one better than the other. I think it's what members prefer. Some may like my style better. Some may like Representative Hall's or Representative Bell's or Representative Kidwell's. I think that's more the real question. I think all four gentlemen who are mentioned, and even some who maybe haven't even announced yet, are sitting in our caucus right now that would make good speakers. I'd have full confidence in any of those gentlemen should they be elected as our speaker, and would certainly be supportive of what they're doing because they've been supportive of me throughout my legislative career. So I think that is the real thing to take away. Is I mean, it's sensational to talk about a speaker's race, and people would, like any other contest, like to see one trying to outdo the other. But I really do think that this just comes down to who at that time when we do make that vote for speaker, where the caucus is, and keeping in mind too that we'll have new members, we'll have members that either don't get reelected, who decide to not run, or other circumstances, they might get another opportunity and then leave. So until you get to that point of after the election, when we know who is in the caucus, knowing then who best fits that caucus at that time, and quite frankly that body at that time, because when we looking at the numbers, it could be a close race, may not be a supermajority. It may. I hope that it is, but if not, the options for speaker I think change based on the circumstances.
Well, Senior Appropriations Chair Jason Saine, we really appreciate you joining us for the interview. Even though it's an extremely busy day in the legislature, thank you for taking some time to talk with us.
Alex, thanks for having me. Thank you.